It's Dynasty season. We're excited. We're having all these rookie drafts, but I wanted to bring you something different today. It's going to be a Dynasty mock draft. So after the NFL draft, right? So a lot of Dynasty leagues and a lot of guys are getting started for Dynasty. They wait till that NFL draft. They know that draft capital, and then they dive into their league and they say, "Hey, let's go. Let's start this thing." So we did a 12-round mock, and I did it with some industry people, and I did it with some Dynasty, just fans, analysts. I think it's a good mix between fans and just fantasy football players, a little bit of analyst in there, but very smart guys. I handpicked these guys and said, "Hey, you want to jump in a mock? Let's go." So let's dive into 12. We're going to be looking at value changes, our favorite picks, team builds, all of that here on this episode. So make sure you tune in. Make sure you watch this if you want to learn how to kind of navigate your dynasty leagues and know where those values are. So let's take a look at rounds 1, 2, 3 and what you can expect from it. So first of all, let's just look at the first round. Nothing changed too much outside of now we're seeing Bijan Robinson get into the first round. We hadn't seen that pre-NFL draft very much, but now he's running back one by a clear margin, as you can see there, going at the 111. But he is clear running back one in terms of value, and he's now in the first round. So he's getting valued as the third highest player outside the quarterback position in this draft, which is a super flex where you start two quarterbacks, than any other position player, right? So when you're talking about peak value for running back, Bijan is there right now. So based on hey, are you going to move him? Do you feel like this would be a good time? This is his elite value. Yeah, and I don't know if he's going to be valued any higher than this, just based on the market value. Now, everything really kind of shapes out. You'll see Anthony Richardson there at the 201. He's kind of solidified himself, as you look in there and understanding where he's at as quarterback 10, 11 in that range in terms of value. Bryce Young went right after that. Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray. So those are your quarterbacks. CJ is going a little bit after some of those wide receivers there, AJ Brown and CeeDee Lamb. Taylor, Jonathan Taylor maybe is a value right now. CMC, and you can see the build right there at the 101, Mahomes, Kelsey, McCaffrey, tight end premium. That's where you're going to see a lot of those guys go. For me, the biggest value change to talk about is Anthony Richardson, right? Like, what is his upside? What's his ceiling? We know what that is, and we know it's a top 5 ceiling, but his floor is considerable, right? So if you spend a pick in that 112, 201 range, like it's a risky outcome. But if you think that his value and you think that he's going to hit his ceiling, having him and Watson paired or one of these quarterbacks in that range, or you go wide receiver, running back in that range and build a solid core, it's a strategy, right? CeeDee Lamb is my favorite pick here. Getting a guy like CeeDee and Brown, especially at like the 206, 207, that's really good value. And I think you can build around like CeeDee Lamb and Lamar Jackson like this guy did in this draft, right? Fields and A.J. Brown. Like those are pretty good value picks for those wide receivers. And that's what you see when those quarterbacks get pushed up so much. And now we're starting to see some of the young quarterbacks get pushed up there. So you're going to see that value play. So if you're sitting around that 107, 108 mark, you could get a guy like Lawrence Fields or Jackson and then pair him with CD. That's not a bad place to be. Most people hate that 107, 106, 108 range, but this is not a bad place to be in terms of where that value is going to be at. Now, let's go to rounds 4 through 6. So let's take a look at the difference there and just kind of talk about it. Now, this is where you start getting into quarterback dead zone. I don't mean dead zone based on value. I'm just saying like you're going to take some shots and some risk here. Like so Tua for only quarterback draft in the 4th round, right? Then you're going to flip it around the 5th and you get Trey Lance. Now, biggest value change for me is Lance. Early on in the offseason, I've done literally hundreds of these. Like, and I'm not exaggerating here. Mock drafts, understanding value, because that's what I try to bring to the channel and bring to you guys here at Football Guys in my articles and my work. And when you're looking at this, Lance was going in the 3rd round or late 2nd, a lot of mocks. Now you've seen him slip a little bit. Now they added another quarterback, right? And so everybody's talking about, hey, could Trey Lance not be the starter? So that's a total value risk play. And for me, when you're looking at Lance go, he's going in that range where you get an elite quarterback at the 101, 102, 103 range. And then are you willing to take that risk that Lance could be your solid QB2? If he hits his ceiling and if you believe in Lance, having Lance and Mahomes or Lance and Allen or Lance and Hurts, that's a contender, right? You're going to win your league if they hit their ceilings and based on just a super flex format and their rushing upside. But there is some risk. But I wanted to kind of point that out. You're going through there. You'll see the other quarterbacks, Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins. Then you got Kenny and Russell Wilson and Jared Goff. Jared Goff could be getting that contract extension, right? So that's something to look at when you're looking at that quarterback 2 option there. I mean, my favorite pick is continually going to be DeAndre Swift. I'm a Swift guy. I believe in his talent. He's got to stay healthy, right? I'm not going to make any excuses for him. But if you're getting Swift going to Philly, and remember, last year we talked about Miles Sanders. we said, hey, Miles Sanders is not a bad value in leagues and drafts, right? Hey, if he stays healthy in that offense, he could smash. And he did kind of smash. Now, running back too, but based on his value where he was going, he did. He improved his ADP. Swift's going at that 601 mark. Not a bad area in terms of like, hey, as a running back too, right? Or if you go in zero running back build and you have him as your running back one, you could build to your wide receiver position. So I thought that was my favorite pick of this round. And you're going to see this like a lot of, wide receivers in this range. Guys like, hey, you're going to reach on maybe some of these guys like DJ Moore, Adams. You have Ayuk in there. What are you looking like that? Godwin, Flowers. So you see some rookies going in there, jumping in there a little bit ahead of these veterans. Now, let's dive into round 7 and 9. What does that look like? So again, you're seeing the quarterback position, just to run through that. I really want to highlight this. I did an article on the quarterbacks and kind of talked about where you see those value and what those tiers look like if you go to Football Guys. But like Geno Smith, 701, how much do you believe in Geno? They're building around Geno, but how much do you believe in him, right? Do you believe him enough to be your quarterback too? Derek Carr is in there, right? Jordan Love is now at the 711 mark, and so we see his value there. And those are the only quarterbacks going in this range, and you're going to see a huge teardrop. We're going to talk about that in the next ones. But biggest value change is Dalton Kincaid. Kincaid jumped up here. You see him ahead of Goddard. He's really getting valued around that tight end 6 to 7 range already. And going to Buffalo, people think he's going to be that slot guy. So you're excited about that when you're talking about his upside in there. My favorite pick though is still Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson still to me can be a wide receiver one. If his touchdowns kind of tick back up, he's that guy in that offense. You at the 807 mark. I think that's really good value. Didn't necessarily love the owner that picked Pickens and Johnson, but I kind of understand maybe Johnson gets moved and maybe you have that value with Pickens. But again, I probably wouldn't pair those guys up. But just going around where he's at, like he got drafted after Jahan Dotson and Amari Cooper, and Christian Kirk, guys that, Kirk, probably the wide receiver 2 is really there, right? Cooper is wide receiver 1. And I don't mind that, but Cooper, we call him the fantasy locust for a reason. He's very inconsistent, right? Jahan Dotson, what is he in that offense? Sam Howell's a quarterback, McLaurin's there, those type of areas. Now you have Deontay in this range where he's the clear wide receiver 1. In this area, when you're looking at wide receivers that go here, Deontay's the wide receiver 1 on our roster, and he's going in the 8th round. That's value for targets, right? When we're talking about earned targets, can they go in there and get them? That's pretty good value there. And then I also want to say, like, this is basically the running back zone of, Mixon and Cook and all these guys that, Aaron Jones, these older prospects. What are you looking there? And then you got to sprinkle in a little other guys. Sanders in there. I think Miles Sanders is a value in the 8th round. Akers could be that guy moving forward. They didn't really do anything in the draft. We're talking, Zach Evans, who I like. At running back 2, though, running back 3 is going to be compete with Kyron Williams there. Akers could be that guy historically when you look at what he did the last 3 weeks. Jason Wood from Football Guys, he talked about his numbers. He could be a low-end running back 1. Akers could be that. If you get him in the 8th round, you like that about him, right? Devin Shane there at the 811. So when you're looking at here, when you're going over like, okay, and I'm setting on my draft strategy because I want to always include that, there's some serviceable running back 2s in this range. Or if you go zero running back, there are some guys in here that can produce 1 year. And right, if you're going to build your roster and say, hey, I want to build my roster, and then look in the 7th, 8th, 9th round for that running back, that is where you could have that value. Right now, let's dive into the last 3 rounds here. So rounds 10 through 12, it gets a little, rounds 10 through 12, they always get a little interesting in terms of like, hey, who's left, right? So guys that, I wanted to kind of highlight. First, Mac Jones. Biggest value change is Mac. Going in the 11th round. So when we're talking about quarterbacks and superflex, going after Will Levis, who got 2nd round draft capital, going after Aaron Rodgers there, he's fallen. He was usually going in the 7th round. Now he's dropping to the 11th round. Maybe a buy low opportunity there. I know Jay Stein at Football Guys, he did a recent article over there talking about quarterbacks and where you can buy them, how, using keep, trade, cut. Good article. I would go check that out. But also when you're looking at like where your quarterbacks are in this range, a lot of these guys I like for QB3s, right? So if you talk about like Rodgers, love him as a QB3, as, hey, I'll go young in that second quarterback. We're going to look at team builds here a little bit. But that's an interesting area. Then favorite pick for me, Antonio Gibson didn't get any competition, really, right? Chris Rodriguez is really going to battle Brian Robinson. I think Antonio Gibson can be that PPR guy in this offense. I think he'll work really well with Eric Bieniemy. At the 11:05, what do you middle 11th round? What are you wasting there, right? Like they went back to back in Montgomery there, Herbert in that range. I think PPR wise, I take a shot at Antonio in that range there. Other guys to highlight, some rookies, Marvin Mims of the 10-10. After the Cortland Sutton in terms of Denver, Tank Bigsby I think is a value at the 10-11. You go smash that. I think he could have some red zone work. You're looking at carries there. I think I think he pairs very well with ETN in that offense. And another guy I want to highlight, Jalen Hyatt, excuse me, from the New York Giants. At 1208, listen, I've never been a big Hyatt guy, but if you're getting the value of he could be realistically the wide receiver one in the New York Giants, and you're getting him at 1208, I think it's a value. And I think that's where you're looking at that in terms of that. Mingo going around before that at the 1104, and then Jaden Reed, 1103. So there's where you get your rookies, kind of sprinkle them in there. Now, let's look at the final outlook here. So let's kind of go through some of these teams. Now, this would be the opportunity in the video to stop it. You can check the whole board and kind of go through and just see what build you like, right? Like, hey, stop it. Say, hey, if I get the 102 right now, and I think this is the value, especially for new Dynasty players, stop it right now and just, this is where you get your big board from. What do you see here? Where do you see players going? You know, when you're in a draft, you can set up your queue. Like, hey, I like these guys. This is where the value is. This is why I do these drafts, these mock drafts, because I think they provide you value. And if you do tiers, you know where the tiers are, so you know how to jump ahead of that. That's essentially where I would go in terms of like that value and everything there. Now, the first team I'm going to show you is my team. So if you look at my team, you're going to go through, and I wanted to kind of show you kind of how I built it out. So you have Joe Burrow there, you got CJ Stroud. So for me, I couldn't. I was thinking, hey, do I go Jonathan Taylor here? I needed to take a CJ. Like for me, I needed to take CJ in there. Then I had Joe Burrow, so I had two quarterbacks in terms of like just value, right? I get Burrow and a young stud there, and then I'm going to take Levis later. So my three quarterbacks, two rookies and Burrow. But if I hit on one of those guys, or if they're a solid QB2, I'm pretty set in terms of dynasty, and I'm willing to take that value where it went. Then you have Jahmyr Gibbs at 305. So I kind of went anchor running back. Now, if you know me, if you know my work, I do like the anchor running back kind of area or the zero running back kind of strategy. I went Gibbs there. So, ranked right now at Dynasty running back 4. If you can get him in the third round, good value. And then, I went Cup, older receiver, but hey, maybe he's one of my buys in terms of, hey, he has that really high production in the next 2 years. Addison, Judy, and Jameson, I like that. Akers is my running back too. Like I said, he could have running back 1 numbers. Freiermuth is more of like a, hey, solid tight end option here. Levis, Gibson, and then Hyatt. That's where I took those guys. Now, I wanted to highlight a couple other drafts as well. So when you look in here at the back end here, I really like this draft, in terms of the zero running back-ish, right? So you get 2 quarterbacks, and Watson and Richardson could have high ceilings. Then you have JSN, T. Higgins, and Quentin Johnston. So when you're looking at those 3 guys, like, hey, wide receiver 1 after this year with JSN maybe, or, wide receiver 2 with DK there. T. Higgins, he can be moved maybe, right? But he high-powered offense. Quentin Johnston, I think he could, realistically take over that duty next year. You have Anthony Richardson, you have Washington, younger team, and you take a shot on Swift as your running back 1 with Rashad there, Amari Cooper, Kendre Miller, like that group. And I like your tight ends that you added there. This is an interesting team build. I wanted to show you guys a build of, hey, wide receivers early, quarterbacks, and then kind of zero running back, right? Where I had the anchor running back. Then last one I want to show you guys is Jay Stein. He's a writer here at Football Guys. He does a lot of great work. He took, I thought an interesting route here. So he grabbed Josh Allen, and then he went Wilson and Pitts, right? And then he had Eckler and Lance. So he took that upside on Lance and Allen there. Eckler, Pitts going for it. Wilson could be a wide receiver 1 this year. Allen. Ayuk there, solid wide receiver 2. Kincaid, again, he liked that in tight end premium, getting that guy. Devin Shane, Hopkins, Bigsby. Like, I love his value play that he did here with Mac Jones and Brock Purdy, too, at the end. In terms of just, hey, I'm going to grab some quarterbacks here. Jay's a big quarterback guy in Superflex. He drafts as many as he possibly can. And so I just wanted to show you that team build as well. So I hope this helps in terms of like, hey, if you're in a Dynasty mock, how does this value look? Please reach out. You can find me on Twitter at @theboys_22. You can do all those different things in terms of like, hey, where am I? I'm on the clock. This is where I'm looking at. Where's the value at? All those type of things. I'm here to help you guys. So I appreciate you guys. Before you leave, hit that like and subscribe button. Let us know how we're doing in the comments. Let us know what picks you liked from this draft.